Welcome to Behind the Play, a video and podcast product of The Hoop Show that explores the lives of Geelong players past and present and the off-field figures that are keeping us strong. And sometimes, just as we're doing today, we get some special guests who are one of the competition, I guess it's fair to say. They bring a different perspective to us Geelong folk. And that's exactly what we're doing today. So we've got Seb from the 12 Rows Back podcast on board. Welcome to the show, mate.
Thanks for having me on. I'm very excited. I think that's about the nicest thing you've ever said. Someone said about North Melbourne this year is that we might be competition for someone. It's been a rough 2022.
Look, there's probably a few people, and this is me slipping the Geelong hat on again. There's a few people probably saying similar things about West Coast all year, and then they pushed us on the weekend, and I got a little scared for a while there.
Oh, that's true, but I don't think the record coming off a bye is great. So just to win and get the 4 points,
take the points and off you go.
Exactly what I said. I said 4 points is 4 points, especially no other team in the 8-1 on the weekend. Just the Cats.
Yeah, good
Carlton
point.
Lost, Skilda lost, Sydney lost.
The rest had the bye.
Yeah, so it was a real important win to get.
Yeah, it's a handy one to bank. Yeah, I suppose I didn't really pay broader attention to. I mean, obviously I knew of the results, but that penny hadn't dropped. It. Yeah, all those losses were kind of those immediately surrounding us. So
Yeah,
pretty handy win in respect.
It's a matter of perspective.
Yeah.
We've had one win all year against the depleted West Coast who had 4 top-up players, whereas the Cats are trying to find a way to win that. What is it?
Elusive, very elusive now.
I was going to say the 10th flag, 11th flag?
Yeah, 10.
10.
It's, this last decade, I mean, we can't complain because we've obviously been up the pointy end for so long, but it feels like it's in the weirdest possible way. It feels like it's been a long way away the bulk of that time because you kind of get so close so many times you think, maybe not. But I don't know. They always give themselves a chance, and I think that's the best thing about it. But we won't focus too much, I guess, on some of the Geelong side of things now. We're here to talk about you and all the cool things that you've been doing. Now, as I mentioned before, you are one of the hosts of the 12 Rows Back podcast. But before you got to all that, obviously, there was a love of footy that was formed. When did you first discover the game? And I mean, we talk about it as you being a North supporter, but when, was North the team that you fell in love with as a child, or did you kind of defect and find your way there? What happened?
No, well, North was the team that was drummed into me from a young age.
Oh, the family thing, yeah.
Yeah, Dad and his father, mad North Melbourne supporters. So Dad was very much the one line I remember was, "You don't follow North Melbourne, you don't eat." Like it was very drummed in, and it just follows down the line because that's the same thing happening with my son at the moment. But
good to hear.
No,
it's a similar policy to what I've got with my kids with Geelong at the moment.
It is. It absolutely is. So I was born 88, so I actually grew up in what was a great era for Norths. My earliest memories are around 93, 94. And then we obviously had a great run through that time, and
in time to see the King in full flight.
Yeah, I caught the tail end of it.
Portion
I reckon.
Yeah.
Dad always used to tell me lots of stories. The one I remember was he kicked 11 against Melbourne one night, but I was too young to go. It was a Friday night game. We had a lot back then, and he told me I couldn't come, and I was real dirty on him because, of course, how often did he kick?
Yeah.
Even in that day and age, he was a centre-half 40, didn't do it that often. And I've just been a mad football supporter since, and growing up, I'm lucky enough to go to our 2 premiership wins, so there's some pretty cherished memories. And then we sort of have had some leanish years from the mid-2000s onwards, a little bit of success, but I've always been just a general fan of footy as well, so we used to try and go to Friday night games or try and get to a final here and there, a few prelims.
Regardless of whether it was North or not.
Yeah, I've been to plenty without North. And yeah, it's just something you always watch and enjoy. And then I guess in the more recent years with the pandemic, you sort of wasn't much else to do but watch footy. So that's sort of where the podcast was born. The lockdown. I don't know if it was 1 or 2, but in the first 2021.
I don't know, we've had 16 of them, so.
That's right. That's right. So that's where that was
the rolling
born,
pandemic.
and then it's just a great excuse to keep watching more footy.
Yeah.
If nothing else.
And so, I mean, you've I guess by your own admission there, you've obviously seen a lot of games over the years. Is that still something, even with a young one now, you're still trying as often as you can to get to a game, whether it's, I mean, I'd admit, obviously the primary focus would be North, but do you still try and whenever you can, even with kids being the age they are, try and tag along to a game?
Yeah, it's only North at the minute with young kids.
Got to pick and choose a bit.
He's 4.5, so he's, look, you can get him to sit, but you've got to get the food out. You might have to
entertain the whole time
with the YouTube on the phone and all that sort of stuff. But we still try and get to every North game in Melbourne. His first game was a Good Friday against the Dogs last year, and we lost by 127. So
good start.
It was a baptism by fire for him, but he doesn't know the difference. He was just happy sitting there and being there. And
people screaming and shouting, having a good time.
Yeah, he still doesn't understand footy or watch it. But if I say I'm going without him, he'd crack the sad. So it's been really special. We went to the Saints Roos game, and that was a 110 game at Marvel, so they still have the as family day kick on the ground afterwards. So we actually got to run out and have a kick on the ground, which was pretty special because that's one of the memories I've got as a kid through the 90s. You know, you could run out on the ground, everyone would race to the middle where it's all fenced off at the centre square. So
I must say that experience is something that, I mean, so my kids are 1 and 3 now. Obviously the 1-year-old a little bit too soon, but even for the 3-year-old, you know, the timing of the pandemic has, you know, made things obviously quite tricky in that respect. But we've taken him so far, and it's killing me because I haven't been able to go to a game all year, and it's still driving me mad. But you know, it is what it is with kids. My son's 3, and that's like I would love to be able to take him on the ground and all that sort of stuff, but it's this weird thing. It's a blessing and a curse. The success that Geelong's had means that we don't really play too many games in that slot. So we don't really, and again, that's a very privileged sort of position, of course. But like, can we just, I don't know, have a bad year or so that we can slide down, maybe play some of those slots, and I can take my kids out for a run around on the ground. It's just a bit of a shame at the moment because I mean I look at the thing and I'm like, how can I take him to a game, and it's 4:40 or something like that, which is not ideal because he's he's absolutely getting home late for bed at that point, or it's, you know, a night game, which is not feasible for him, but also makes it basically impossible for me too because I've got to try and help out and then go from there. It's a fine line. It's again a very privileged spot to be in as a supporter of the club, but geez, as a dad, Geelong could just drop off a little bit and maybe, or if the AFL could just throw me a bone and have a few of those early slots, it'd be nice.
Well, I think they could do a much better job of scheduling stuff for families in general. So it's all TV ratings.
Well, we're seeing that in the rights and the prices of food and all that sort of stuff. Yeah, 100% right.
And Thursday night footy, we got to space the games out, all that sort of stuff. And then they wonder why people can't turn up. And it's freezing cold in Melbourne. You know, Richmond are playing Port Adelaide. No one's that keen to go.
And they're not doing anything to incentivise, beyond the game itself, which is really expensive.
Oh, massively expensive.
So yeah, it's a really tricky spot. Now, I guess another important thing to kind of note as we kind of, I guess, profile you a little bit is the fact that you've been coaching the Hampton Rovers quite a bit over the years too.
Yeah, I never played for them as a junior, but once we sort of got out of school and a couple of years into uni, we sort of just wanted to get back and play with your mates. And then I was never one for much running. I'm always
I'll embrace that lifestyle these days.
Yeah, I was always happy with the way I could take a mark, if I do say so myself. But having to move and run and jump and run fast, that was not me. So the thirds was where I sort of cut my learnt my craft sort of as an adult, and then it was sort of we don't have a coach, we need a coach. So I sort of just put my hand up and started coaching and playing, which was a learning experience. I can't imagine I couldn't have imagined what people had to go through to get the teams together and all that sort of thing. And it's going to hold me in good stead because I'd love to get involved when my kids are playing footy as they grow up and help out. And I'm not saying I want to be the coach from under 8s through to under 16s.
Yeah, follow them the whole way through,
help out with running or boundary umpiring and that sort of stuff just as they go, because those clubs are built on the volunteers. And we were playing amateurs. I didn't get paid. I wasn't allowed to get paid and play because it was amateurs, which had no problems with. You're
doing it for the love of it, right?
Absolutely. And I got a lot out of it. Like, confidence in sort of public speaking and that sort of stuff grew. And every Friday night I was ringing about 20 or 30 different blokes, some of them who I didn't really know, going, "Oh, come on, you want to play? You want to play?" And at that level, it's really, you have to really push them to want to get out of bed early and play. But that was a good couple of years. I like to think I contributed, because the seniors won the flag both years I coached the thirds. So I like to think
It's all your fault.
Well,
Got to claim it, right?
We're a footy factory. Like, I can't remember if I did have any players who played a game in the thirds and then played in the flag. But I definitely had guys who played in the thirds who suddenly we realised, oh yeah, maybe you're a bit better than this level. Move them up and play a few senior games. But that was...
Claim the credit, though.
Oh, my word, I did. But that was, like, being involved with a footy club is just a different experience. You sort of have to do it to sort of really, really enjoy it. And I went from, being involved, but turning up, training once a week, playing on Saturday, to, all right, got to pick a team, got to turn up.
Yeah, there's a lot of behind the scenes stuff that goes into it.
All the functions, you got to pull everyone along to the functions. Like, I went and did my AFL. It'd be like level 1 or 2 accredited coaching and all that sort of stuff. But like, it was just playing footy and being involved with footy. It was great. Sort of something you miss, but at the same time, once you got 2 little kids, it makes things very tough.
Yeah, there's certainly a time constraint.
Yeah.
But you're right. Like that idea is something I'm certainly. I've been missing being involved in a footy club for, quite a long time. So I am certainly looking forward to that idea that when my kids are old enough, I'll just whether it's running or drinks or whatever the case happens to be, I'll just get involved and help out and be a part of that community in that respect. It's something I'm looking forward to myself.
Yeah, I think it's really important, and we're seeing now with all these umpire rules and the stand and the dissent stuff. Sorry, they want to get umpires in through the doors. I'm never going to umpire, but it's a general thing of we need more people helping them.
Yeah, just getting involved in the game.
That's what the clubs are built on, the volunteers. And you still, you see some clubs, they got the boot stutter who's still been there since the 80s, and they're still doing little bits and pieces, like the Footscray, the Bulldogs doctor with the mustache. I forget his name, but he's an iconic face.
Yeah, and I mean, you even think about the Sydney games, for example, and you see him when they sing the song, and I've gone blank on his name, but there was the older bloke there that you'd always see, the white hair, like reliably every single week, and you imagine that he probably didn't have any role other than to be there for that moment. But like it's those sorts of things that remind you that even at the very top level, there's another element there. There's a more human element there. It's not just that professional, we get in the grind that you go through every single week, lead up to a game, go again, chasing the premiership sort of thing. There is this human sort of factor as well, which is still fantastic to see. It's great that it still exists, I guess, at that top level, and then it's obviously what fuels the as you move further and further down.
Yeah, there's still elements of it at the top level. Like, we have moved professionally, obviously, but there's still people involved, and that's one of the things we hark back to is the tradition. Obviously they have the debate over the grand final time slot, and it's really ratings versus traditionalists in its purest sense. But
I guess where do you sit on that particular matter?
I would, if I was making the decision right now, I'd say a twilight grand final.
It's good middle ground, right?
It is, but I've got no, like, I'll watch it no matter what time it is. I'll plan my day around it, so I don't really have a preference. But the more I thought about it, 3 years ago I was saying night grand final, and then we have a few a little bit different through the pandemic, because we've had them in lockdown versus if it's not in lockdown, it's a bit of a different scenario. But it did feel like an awful long time to wait for the game.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to kind of hear what the Queenslanders or the WA fans had to say, considering it was kind of in their backyard, because I wonder if we'd be saying the same things had those grand finals been played in Melbourne. The nature of sort of the celebrations and kind of the pre-game sort of parties that are going on, what would that have been like? But instead, we're locked in our homes and unable to really experience it perhaps the way that some of our interstate friends were.
That's an interesting point, and that's probably a very forgotten thing about how the interstate fans sort of feel and see things, especially those in Perth, where it's
the time thing,
2 hours behind. So they actually had a traditional start time, I think, last year, because it was before.
Well, for us, traditional,
yeah, which then harks back to, well, if we're starting at 2:30, they're starting at 12:30, which is a very early.
Yeah, it's
game
early
of
to get
football,
going,
but all the media is based out of Melbourne and everything else, so I understand it. But I'm just personally, I start trying different things. I think we need to do more of that. We're very set in our
Experiment a bit.
ways in the AFL world, and that's one thing to sort of paraphrase metaphor. Coaches should do it as well. When things aren't going well, you need to try different things and
The
learn
flip
what
the magnets
players are
around
capable
idea.
of. Yeah, and I think that could be done with the grand final time slot and potentially location
Yeah.
at some point.
Well, obviously the location one. Now that we're out of the worst parts, I should say. Hopefully, touch wood, of the pandemic. Obviously, we know the location thing's going to be now set for another 30 plus years. But yeah, certainly that time slot. I'm with you. Twilight's, and I actually did share that same sentiment too. That nighttime, it's the way to go. And I wasn't looking at it through the financial lens. I couldn't care less about the AFL in that sense. Like, we know that they're going to make money hand over fist regardless. They are with the daylight grand final. They will at night time. Maybe they'll make more, but okay, sure, whatever. But that, I was very much like the experience, the theatre, the sort of things that we did see, especially from Perth. Put on a real show. I mean, Brisbane did as well, and I guess I had a keener eye on that one because Geelong was participating in the grand final, and now I try to forget about it. But both, to the credit of both states, they did a fantastic job considering they were kind of adopting it, and there was a little bit of pushback locally and all those sorts of things. Locally here, I should say. But yeah, it's kind of a fascinating perspective there, and I don't know. I like your idea. Kind of flip the magnets around, see what's possible. Try 440, see what it does. It is this potential sweet spot between the typical daylight shift and the evenings, and there's pros and cons to both of those, so who knows what comes of it.
Yeah, I just think they need to see and find out what works best, and they could have a 441 this year, and then they can go back to 230 next year. It's not it's not like the MCG contract that is seemingly set in stone for the next 30 odd years. Yeah.
So I guess focusing back in on your experiences with North, over the years, and as you mentioned, kind of some early on, and some of your earliest footy memories were of the success that you saw in the 90s there. Talk me through that. Did you say before that you actually got to go to both of those games? Was that right?
Yeah, I was at 96 and 99.
So what was that like attending?
Oh, they were fantastic. I think it was 99. They had a long red scarf that was given out for up there Kazali, and everyone sort of had it and held it up, which
Very
I've
nice.
still got somewhere. And then I remember bits and pieces of the entertainment. Don't remember really a second of either game, like from the stands. I've seen them countless times, but don't really remember too much as the experience 8 and 11. But yeah, no, they were pretty spectacular, because I do remember going to each of the finals in the lead up. So the prelims, the qualifyings. I remember going to the 98 prelim. We lost to St Kilda, and then we were off to Queensland the next day and didn't go to the grand final, and I still don't know if it was a blessing or a curse, because I wouldn't have been there, but we still should have won that one.
Yes, absolutely.
But yeah, funnily enough, one of my best footy memories from the 90s is the 99 prelim of Essendon Carlton, where this is back when they were on delay, so it wasn't live on TV, and we're listening on the radio. Well, I probably really wasn't, but Dad was, and there's a point in it, and then somehow Carlton have managed to beat Essendon, because we hate Essendon, absolutely hate them. Still believe we would have beaten them, but they were the best team, quote unquote, for the year. And it meant we had to play a Carlton side that effectively played their grand final the week before, knocking out a key rival. So that was...
You go into it feeling somewhat confident, right?
Oh, yeah, we were supremely confident in that grand final, and from my memory, it was never really in doubt. But it was... You don't know it till you don't know what it's like until it happens to you. But we were in the finals every year, at least. It was 7 prelims from 94 to 2000, and then 2001 we dropped off a little bit, and then obviously Wayne Carey, we had all that saga and scandal and everything else, and then Pagan left, and then we sort of had to find ourselves a little bit. And Dean Laidley came in, and we started to come back up. And then 2007 we played the Cats in the qualifying final. I went along to that. I think it was about 80 something points. Could have been closer to 100. It wasn't pretty. Didn't really matter who the Cats played that week, I don't think, to
No,
be fair.
no, I think you're right.
And then I did my first interstate footy trip for the preliminary final. We went over to Adelaide to play Port. Shocking game. We lost by 70 points, but I'm sort of glad we lost that one and not the following week, because that scarred Port Adelaide losing that grand final.
Yeah, absolutely. They didn't. It took a long time to recover from that, and they weren't ready. I think most people, and perhaps even the supporters and the club themselves, would admit that like they were popping up before their time, and good on them for making it. But yeah, potentially did a bit of damage to them.
Oh, I think it did. But I don't know what's better, losing a grand final, losing a prelim.
It's all much for muchness, right?
Well, the difference is I think people remember Port losing that game and how bad it was, whereas people forget the week before in the preliminary final. The
margin is there. Like that you can't wipe that.
No, you can't. Even though our margin, I think, was 70 points the week before, it seems to be what I've tried to wipe it. And yeah, so it was sort of lots of success, and then it's been pretty lean since then, with a few trips, sort of okay trips to the finals, but nothing too special. And it sort of makes, if you look back on it now, obviously St Kilda have a very long drought, but then outside of the teams that haven't won one, you've got Carlton, North Adelaide and Essendon all around the 22 to 25 years sort of thing. So it's starting to creep up, that drought, because we obviously had Sydney and Geelong and so another team that broke the drought through the 2000s.
I mean, Geelong, Sydney, the Dogs in 2016.
Dogs is one I'm thinking of.
Look, even the Tigers with 2017 as well. Like the similar sorts of story, because for them it was the 80s prior to that. So
which is 35 years.
Yeah. So we've seen a lot of these little droughts, and then as a result, some of these little mini dynasties that have popped up out of them as well, in various different capacities. Whether you look at Geelong every other year, or Richmond, they're 3 out of 4, and Hawthorn, all those sorts of things along the way. So it's been kind of an interesting period in that respect. And I guess through that period, were there any years where you, obviously, as you said, the North kind of climbed up and they were seriously competitive at a few different points, but were there any of those years in particular that you look back and go, that could have been it? Or even at the time, do you go, oh, look, we're great, we're doing a good job, but we're still maybe a rung down from whether it's Geelong in 07 or whoever along the way?
Definitely nothing through the 2000s. We were definitely a rung down in 2007. I always felt, I guess it's with both coaches, but under Dean Laidley was a great tactician. We just were missing some real stars and some class. And then we made the prelim that year. I think the following year we lost to Sydney, I think, and then we dropped off, and then Dean out. Brad Scott in.
Yep.
And then I think Brad Scott was a severely underrated coach, and
he took a few prelims as well.
Yeah, we went to back-to-back prelims and then another final series. We played a fair bit of finals under him, but everyone kept saying how terrible our list was through that time. Not terrible, but the list isn't good enough. They've got good players, but not enough great players. And then you go, well, yeah, okay, but then we got to back-to-back prelims and played sort of 3 final series in a row. So if the list was that bad, he's a great coach.
Yeah.
Or he's not that good a coach, and the list
there's always
good,
something that you could nitpick, right?
You've got to look at it both ways. But I thought he did a great job with the team we had. We haven't had a great midfield star for years. Like, we have Brent Harvey.
Yeah.
And he's great, but he's just not big. And I think the trend we've seen over the last 15 years is bigger bodied midfielders. I mean, the best ones in the comp now are the same size as what Carey was in the 90s.
Yeah, I know the game's really changed a lot in that respect, hasn't it?
It's changed massively. And Boomer was great. Love him, don't get me wrong, but he was quick and fast and nimble and agile, but we sort of missed that star inside midfielder who sort of does everything and bobs up for some goals.
Yeah, I mean, I guess as an outsider looking in, I keep looking at Ben Cunnington being that guy, but he's just had such an unfortunate run with obviously the cancer and all those sorts of things he's had to endure. Not to mention a few injuries outside of that as well. I look at him and go, like, he's a player that if only he, and I don't know if you share the same sentiment, but like if only he could stay out on the field, like he could be the thing that kind of elevates that club, and you can start to build your midfield around. And that, I mean, obviously we hear all these rumblings about Jason Horne-Francis and whether there's any substance to it. I guess we'll learn in due course. But if you have a figure like that in there that really can, he's not the sort that I guess grabs the game by the scruff of the neck like a Dusty or a Paddy Cripps or someone like that. But he's just so unbelievably consistent. He'd get his high 20s, 30. He'll set like he does so many really effective things. He's just tough. He's always at the bottom of the pack. That it's just a shame that he's not. I mean, obviously the health is far more important, and good luck to him in this continued recovery. But looking at it through the footy lens, you go, like there's something that they could build around there, and he just can't get on the field, unfortunately.
Yeah, so I think if he came around 3 years earlier, he would have been more closer to his prime for those years where we were in the prelims.
Yep.
But he's the one we miss most this year. And if you watched any of our games last year up until he did get his diagnosis and obviously went off to sort that out, he's not only was he so important, like everything flowed through him.
Yeah.
And obviously we still didn't win many games, but he kept us in a lot of games, or he'd have one guy hanging off. But his hands were so good. He's so clean, and his kicking's pretty underrated. Sam Mitchell had a better career, and will have, obviously playing at Hawthorn, but he did a very similar style of thing. He'd go in, he'd get it, he wouldn't look rushed, and he'd kick either foot
poise, yeah,
and get it out. And he started to add some goal kicking towards in his more recent years, and he's definitely a big loss because at the moment we've got all these young kids who
no one to look up to,
uber talented, but no one's sort of in there carrying the load or showing them what to do and stuff like that. So he's definitely the one who's been our best, I guess, midfielder. Andrew Swallow is our captain for quite a while. Great footballer. Not
and again,
saying a bad
tough.
word about him. Tough. Just missed the class aspect. Same as probably Adam Simpson. Same sort of thing. He just missed that level of class, but 300 games.
And look, you can have those players. And I guess if I swing it around Geelong, like I think about Tom Harley, for example, who was, if you went and sorted him based on ability, he might have struggled to get a gig in the Geelong team through that premiership period. But that leadership and that approach to the game was obviously what made him so important to the club. And so you can have players that fit that bill. But yeah, the problem I guess for North is that outside of when we look at Ben Cunnington, the fact that he can't get on the field, but even if he was, there's that group around him doesn't exist at the moment.
It doesn't.
Developing.
It doesn't. They're developing and they show lots of patches, but it's too few at the moment, sort of contributing for more than a quarter and a half. But look, that's just where we're at. It's not it is what it is. Once you accept it, it becomes a little bit easier to deal with what's in front of you. But we've had some success. And then I think to answer your original question, the year I felt we were closest was 2015, where we lost to West Coast over there in the prelim, where we were in front and we just couldn't kick a goal to save our lives. West Coast came back, won. And I don't know if we would have beaten Hawthorn, but those
put
years
up a better
Hawthorn
fight than
won,
what West Coast did that week.
I give Hawthorn all the credit in the world for winning them, but they took full advantage of where the Suns and the Giants came in, and all the young talent was sort of siphoned into those clubs, and whether they knew they were doing this or not, because it's such a hard game recruiting, they managed to build and top up and get the right players in where it made them sustain that success that little bit longer. And in some ways it was just the circumstances helped them sort of win that, and I wonder what would have happened. But I'm 100% with you. I mean, there were some fortunate circumstances from the new clubs that came in, and obviously I can't totally fall into the trap of this, but I mean, like, because they beat us to get into the into the grand final in 2013, breaking the curse. But even after that, like, we've still been their bogey team for the most part. Like they managed to dodge us a little bit through along the way. Like I think about, I guess, and there's always these swings and roundabouts and how those sort of things play out. I think about 2016 and the fact that
like the Dogs made it and won the grand final, but they couldn't get near us whenever we played them. And we played them a couple of times through the year, and we belted them both times, and it was just like, geez, if we just found ourselves on that side of the draw for the prelim instead of facing Sydney, where we ultimately did fine outside of the first quarter, we got blown away. You go, wonder what if, like, because we. Yeah, and there's always those sorts of moments, and obviously you're sharing yours about 2015 there in a very similar fashion to what I think about several other little opportunities along the way. It's crazy how some of these things play out sometimes.
It is. The one I think of that comes to mind from a Cats point of view is last year against Melbourne. The last round, you win that, their confidence is very different going through the finals, and they don't believe they can do whatever they want.
And we're on the opposite side of the draw to them too.
There's that.
There's that
and
prelim
then,
when we're all sick.
Yeah, it just changes things massively. But that's footy.
Yeah,
that's why those players in those moments when they do stand up and do something brilliant are even more brilliant than you realise at the time. It's not just they're kicking a goal. It's the fact that if they don't do it, all these other things happen as a result.
Yeah. No, all credit to Max Gawn and Melbourne for what they did in that moment, in that game, and obviously what happened since. And look, as a team that's chasing them, a fan of a team that's chasing them this year, if they can continue this slide they're currently on, that'd be fantastic.
How much the seasons has changed in 4 weeks. They looked almost unbeatable. We knew they were going to drop a game, but they've dropped 3. They dropped 1, then they've dropped, now it's 3, and the last one wasn't in great fashion to Collingwood, who having a good year for where they were at the end of last year, but they're certainly not world beaters down there.
Yeah, 100%. But I guess they show up, they give it a crack each week, and it gives you a chance. And I guess that's what any club or any support of a club really wants. So, and I guess I should note, as we're kind of having this conversation about all that, we are talking about this post round 14. So the I guess just dating the episode a little bit for anyone. If Melbourne's gone on to lose again, they are playing Brisbane as of leading into the round we're talking about tomorrow. What are we? No, it's Tuesday. A couple of days from now, as of when we talk. So who knows where Melbourne is at and what we're all saying about them post this conversation. But as we kind of continue that conversation on, I guess one of the other things I really want to hone in on is the podcast itself. We touched on it at the beginning there, but we haven't really hit on it too much just as of yet. Now, you said it was kind of born in the pandemic. How did that ultimately come about?
Well, it's one of those things we talked about probably for years. We should do a podcast, and oh yeah, that sounds good. But, and as you'd know, you want to do it, you actually got to go out and do it and make it happen. So you got to get a microphone or camera, whatever you need, you got to go and get it. And then you got to sit down and learn how they work and how it's going to work and where you're going to upload and then all that sort of stuff.
And even suddenly just the beats within the show too, like the learning that cadence between you and the other people on the show.
Absolutely. So once the pandemic hits, suddenly you got a bit more free time on your hands. It's like, I'm a bit bored, I might as well do it. Let's do it. And so we just started, it's just a general footy podcast, but we started just talking basically whatever we wanted footy-wise, and we'd pick the hot topics or whatever and give our view and build up a small following, a lot of friends and family and that and everything else. And then it's sort of, I like to think it's grown, but we've just tried to be consistent every week. This year's been very tough because my co-host just got his first child on the way, and that obviously takes up a lot of your time.
It's a big curveball, yeah.
So we haven't missed an episode, but we do try and get 2 episodes out. One where we review the games and one where we talk about the next one. Footy. But we try not to, I think it's pretty apt at the minute with everything that's gone on with the media, like picking apart, say, Horn Francis or De Goey or whatever. We try not to just talk about the topic given to you by the media, whether it's set by
what the agenda is
in the morning or whatever. Yes, I've got an opinion on Horn Francis and everything else, and I've given it and all that sort of stuff, but we try and look at it a little bit differently, have a lighthearted take and have a little bit of fun. And my co-host is a mad Saints fan and really struggles to get the Saints hat off, which at times
can be entertaining too for the product.
At times is excruciating, as they've gone through and won lots of games and they lose to Essendon, and a little bit of fun just letting him go. And it's been probably one of the best things I've sort of done, and
that's awesome.
Good hobby to have.
Yeah,
keeps you busy, keeps you out of trouble.
Yeah, and it does, like, and I think sometimes if you are just a fan of stuff, or you kind of sitting on the sidelines, you see these products, a consumer of them. Sometimes you don't like necessarily recognize that there is a massive creative element to it as well. Like, and again, kind of getting that flow within the show. What topics work? How can I, depending on the sort of show that people are trying to create, how can I segue from one thing to the other? I mean, obviously some kind of shows have more clearer cuts. They're more defined cuts between what they're doing there. But like there is this really cool creative aspect to creating, whether it's just an audio only podcast or a video one as well, and the sorts of things that you do with that. And so I'd imagine that's an enjoyable challenge as well from week to week.
Absolutely, and we've come so far from the first episode, which would have been tinny and grainy, and we just sort of talked for 45 minutes, and now, I mean, we've just gone through some of the buy rounds where we've got less to review, but we've talked more.
Yeah, I did notice they're about hour 10 long episodes, the most recent ones.
Yeah, we talk longer because we sort of know where we're going, and there's more flow, and I don't know, there's been more to talk about. You sort of find your groove with it.
Yeah, it's something that comes from experience.
Yeah, definitely. And we really, really enjoy it. Absolutely love talking footy, and then we also have unique views on a lot of things, I think. I'm definitely more out there, less of a traditionalist, as you probably picked up on the grand final time slot. I've been a big campaigner of, and I know this probably won't happen, but moving the grand final around to different states, because in my opinion, that's how you grow the game. You don't send the Giants to play the Dogs on a Saturday night and get 6,000. You send the grand final to Sydney, and then whatever it is, it's a big celebration. That's how you get people into it. And I'm big on, let's bring a Tassie team in, let's bring a Northern Territory team in, let's grow like that. I have this probably unpopular view, and my club's in the firing line, but there are too many teams in Melbourne, and that is a unique thing of our game, but it also makes it so hard for some of the little clubs to survive. And my dad was a big fan of, they should have sent North to the Gold Coast in 2007 purely because it guaranteed survival. The AFL's not going to give up on Gold Coast, and we could have had that plus the draft picks plus everything else. So, and
an established base and all those sorts of things as well.
Yeah.
Now, you said that was your dad though. Where did you sit on the matter at the time?
I would have been 18, 19 and probably wasn't too worried whether we did or didn't. I don't think I fully understood the gravitas of what was on offer. But I'm certainly glad we stayed and prefer having my team in my backyard. But if I take the North Melbourne hat off, which I really try and do on the podcast, it's really hard as well. I just think you need to get some of the teams out of Melbourne and have less of a dependence.
Breathing room.
And even like, I think Geelong are the best example of this. Not regional towns. Geelong's obviously a big town, but get it to different towns that are not the capital of the state.
Yes.
We've got 2 in Perth, but why not have one Broome, or we've got up in Queensland, you've also got Gold Coast and Brisbane, but Toowoomba or Cairns or different places, and you could go Ballarat or Bendigo and let the clubs, and Geelong don't get the benefits of this, but let them, all right, we get a home game, we get a home final, we can build up an event in the town and get everyone in, which obviously you get through the season, but you miss out on it come finals time, which is...
Look, who knows? Obviously, with the stadium growing the way it is, maybe that'll change. So they're trying their hearts out, but you're right. Like, what it does for these communities is huge. And I guess on that point, and kind of referencing previous episodes where I've had John Aaron, who's an MP in the Geelong area, and Steve Bracks prior to that as the former Premier of the state. Now, both Geelong biased in those instances, but they both spoke about in their respective conversations about how, yes, like we built this stadium, and yes, it's great for footy and those sort of things. But the other things that unlocked as well. You think about Geelong, and they had the Foo Fighters early in the year, and obviously, things kind of we dance around, with Taylor after that. But like the opportunities that it unlocks for these regional cities or towns as a result of having a footy stadium there is quite huge. Like, they make millions of dollars, that not just for the club, but the city itself, because people come in and they stay. Like, the interstate supporters come and stay, or I guess in the case of Melbourne, within Victoria, even those that are making the drive down the freeway, some will stay because it's by the beach. So, here's an opportunity to go stay by the coast and those sorts of things. Like, there's little opportunities that come out of that. And I think that's really important. So yeah, to your point, whether it's Broome or whatever, obviously what we've already spoken about with Tassie and Northern Territory, like these sorts of opportunities are there and they could be taken. And not only is it going to be great for the game, but it's going to be great for the actual locations themselves as well.
It definitely is, and that's what they're doing with the Commonwealth Games bid by putting all the events regionally through Victoria. Like, it just, there's people out there, and people will travel. Like, it's one thing. I've enjoyed going down to Geelong to watch North play over the journey.
Yep.
Last time I went down there, we kicked one goal. Like, it was one goal for the game.
Sorry, I shouldn't laugh like that.
I hadn't been down there for a night game in a long time. I forgot just how cold it can get at that stadium.
It's horrific, right?
It just made worse by the fact we kicked one goal 13 or something. It was deplorable. But we've had some fun trips down there as well. I can't remember going down there where we've won, but it was a game in 2008.
Time will come.
Will it? It doesn't feel like it at the moment. But it was down there in 2008. Obviously, we didn't win that one. We only lost one game for the year through the home and away season. But David Hale kicked 8. I've never forgotten it because I don't think he's ever had a game like that in his life.
No.
But it's just fun. Like, you grab a couple of mates, you get in the car, you go down. And it just brings people into the area as opposed to what we've got at the moment. People whinging about, the MCG's on my side of town. I don't want to travel to Marvel. The G's a better ground. Whereas if you're on the west, like, it's a pain to get to the G. And now they're working out, it's too cold at the MCG through winter, so they should play it at Marvel. But Marvel's it's very privileged what we've got in Victoria,
absolutely.
and we don't realise
especially the temperature side of it. Like, you're trying to tell me it hasn't been cold any other year that footy's been like it's a winter game. That's how it's been every single year. And I mean, without wading too much into politics and science and environment, those sort of things, like global warming, the thing's getting warmer. You can't say it's getting worse. So it's it's a weird sort of a one. I guess that kind of cycles back to what we're saying. We're talking about before, where really the cold isn't the issue here. It's what they're doing within the ground, and not the game itself, but what they're doing in and around it that is not attracting people or is simply detracting people because of those prices. Like, it's the bottom line. It's people are stretched off the back of the last few years, and they need to subsidise that a little bit to get people in the door.
Yeah, they do, and they're not. They seem to be okay saying, well, we're not increasing prices, we're keeping them flat, so they're not going up. But
meanwhile, the food and drink is going through the roof.
Everything else is going up, and they were always too expensive.
That was expensive before. That's the issue.
I was looking for tickets for an away game, like in Victoria, but an away game, and it was $60 a ticket. I'm like, well, come on, like, if it was at the G, you can get MCC guest for $50, and you get the privilege of being MCC. But it's just the cost. I mean, members, we've got reserved seats for the North game, so that sort of does us. But it becomes expensive, and then I'm telling you, when you start taking kids and you've got to
feed them,
so we make sure we plan ahead, and we go to the supermarket, get some snacks and some this and that. So we got plenty. We still have to spend sort of $15 to get it, but you buy some chips and a drink at the ground, there's 15, and that lasts 10 minutes. So yeah. So it is, between that and the scheduling and the fact people through the pandemic have worked out, it's pretty comfortable at home. It's warm at home. We're getting good access through the media and everything else. Like, they are broadcasting the game. I don't necessarily like the commentators, but the level of access is probably better than it ever has been. So there's a lot of reasons not to go to the footy at the moment.
Yeah, and hopefully the AFL can crack that nut and work out how to get people back inside. And I guess I say that as someone who's not been all year, but seriously longs to. It's not anything they're doing specifically that's keeping me away. But I think more broadly though, it's so important they look at these obstacles, hear what the community and the fans are saying, and try and respond to that.
Yeah, and it's the next generation of fans.
Yeah.
We're longing to go. We'll go as often as we can. Yeah. But if we don't take our kids and get them in 10 years, well, they're not going to care or want to go. And then the crowds will start going down and down and down. They'll get to rugby league crowds, 6,000-7,000, and then it'll be a problem. But they're I think they're trying to have it both ways. Get the maximum TV dollar deal and then try and get everyone in. Well, the TV is going to pay more if people stay at home and watch, not turn up. So it's
Yeah, extract your money and then try and pivot to go work out, okay, now what can we do to stop them watching on TV and come in.
Yeah,
but
definitely.
Yeah, it'll be an interesting one for it. Now, as we start to wind things down a little bit, and I guess we'll hone in a little bit. We'll have a Geelong and North sort of edge to this sort of thing. I tend to ask this question of our Geelong supporting or Geelong affiliated people along the way, but I'll start with the North focus. Who's the greatest North player that you've ever seen?
Wayne Carey.
By a mile? Not even...
By a mile.
Yeah. No, that's fair.
If I took him out, it'd be Corey McKernan second.
Yep. Fantastic player, and obviously, did so much for the club, but yeah, I think you're right.
Yeah, Carey. To take North player out of it, he's the best I've seen.
Yeah. I was just full stop across the board.
Yep. But there's a North bias there. I will admit that, but he's easily the best I've seen.
And if you look at your current crop, who do you see there as kind of being? And obviously we've spoken before that the club is kind of in a difficult spot right now. But like, who do you see as that player? And I guess is it Horn Francis, or I mean, this kind of leans into some of your thoughts on what's going on there at the moment. But like, who is that player that you can't help but watch each week, and you think that like they're potentially that kind of that Paddy Cripps, that Ben Cunnington, that whoever it happens to be, the one that we can kind of build a club around.
Well, watching Horn Francis in his first 10 weeks, or 12, however many games he's played, it's definitely him. To put a Geelong flavour on it, he does attack the ball like a Dangerfield. He's obviously not as big.
He'll get there
yet, but he'll
looks like
he'll
a big
grow.
boy.
He'll have no problems. He'll have a 10, 12, 14-year career, and I've spoken about this on the podcast. I'm certain he'll win a Brownlow at some point. At this point, I'm concerned whether it's for us or another club, but he's got a level of competitiveness that not all young players have, or not all players have.
Yeah.
And it's when the club's going so poorly, it's a negative focus on him. Whereas if we were suddenly playing well, and if we won 4 or 5 and he played well on them, it'd be, wow, how good is he? How good could he be? It's a team sport, so when he's on the field, there's still 17 others around him, and like everyone's got to sort of pull their weight. I certainly do watch him, and I've enjoyed watching him. I love going to games and watching players off the ball or not watching the ball, because you sort of see how they run and move and what they're doing. And I've seen him sort of effectively start fights, but he sort of cops it from someone, gives it back to them. Like he just wants to play footy and be in there.
Yeah.
I'm really excited for Taron Thomas to get healthy and have a run at it. So he hurt his ribs. Was it against Geelong he hurt his ribs? Or did he
it was actually, yeah. I think you're right.
So he missed 1 or 2 weeks after that. He's come back. He's still a little bit injured.
And he's dropped him again because he wasn't quite ready to go, or wasn't quite performing.
I heard he was out partying or on the drink up in Gold Coast after that game. So
yeah, right.
That's what I've heard. It wasn't widely reported.
Not confirmed,
but, I don't sort of doubt it, because he's too good to just be dropped on form.
Checks out, yeah.
But he's playing as sort of a mid/half forward, and when your team's struggling, the worst spot to be is half forward or forward pocket or something like that.
Yeah,
because it doesn't come down there. When it does, you're outnumbered or you're outgunned,
or they're pumping it in towards the talls, because the history says like that's your best chance.
Yeah, it's a forward in general as well, because I've seen what Larky's getting double teamed, and why wouldn't you? Like, he's the biggest threat. You put 2 on him, no one else is going to do anything. Yeah. I'd love to see us flip the magnets and move Taron Thomas to half back, because he's got such a beautiful kick. He'll kick it 50, but not players have that looping kick. He'll sort of dart it through the air, and that can change the game with angles. He's quick. He can certainly play, and we haven't seen it yet, but Will Phillips, the guy we drafted ahead of Logan McDonald, controversially, although make of that what you will, because Logan, they're just both so young. Logan's played some good games and not so. He's had glandular fever to start the year and still coming off that. He won't do much this year, but he's a prodigious talent, and he's quick, he's classy, he looks like he could sort of be that outside player. So they're sort of the 3 I love to try and watch, but between this year, they've been injured, suspended, sick, all that sort of stuff. So that sort of sums up where our year's been at, to be honest.
No, that's totally fair. And I guess now putting that kind of Geelong flavour on things. And I guess you bring in outside perspective to this thing. Some of the questions I tend to roll with typically at the end of the episode. If you were their schoolyard pick, you had to choose between junior and senior. Who would you go with?
Senior.
In a heartbeat. Don't think twice.
Well, Junior's the best midfielder I've ever seen. Just some of the stuff Senior
like that
did was just freakish.
Yeah.
I remember as a kid, and I've got my uncle and all his kids are mad Geelong. We go because they're regional Victoria out near Hamilton, a bit further out, and farms up there. So that's where my mum was from, grandparents were from. So we go up and stay, and we'd all go to church. And mum's one of 7, so there'd be huge family there. Anyway, they'd spend their whole time trying to convince me to go for Geelong. That's all they would do.
You got to have a crack.
But then one day I was up there and we watched Senior, and I can't remember what he did, but it was some amazing stuff. And I was like, oh yeah,
it's
pretty good. For a moment. I did consider it, and then Dad came down hard. But Senior was a freak, but it's not a pick you could really get wrong, I don't think.
Yeah, it is always an interesting perspective though, because they are two very different players, despite the surname being the same. Well, I guess the first name being the same as well. It's pretty interesting sort of perspective that anyone can bring to it, and there's totally good reasons to go one way or the other. Who is the greatest cat that you've seen? Would it be Senior again?
Well, having seen,
and again, obviously that's a different perspective because you are looking at it from over the fence, different perspective,
it is.
Different team.
I wouldn't say I've seen a lot of Senior.
Yeah.
I just know, and I've probably seen more highlights, whereas I've actually gone to games. I went to a few Geelong Collingwood games through that 2010-11 era. Well, not 11,
yes.
2010 and earlier. And I used to watch Gary run. I used to watch Gary and Dane Swan because they wouldn't play on each other, but it would be in the same area around the ball. And they just run and run and run, and they were just so good. And, yeah, Junior was...
in very different ways too, though.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely, very different
because Dane
ways.
didn't have the pace.
No, he was burst efforts Dane, but not. Yeah, Junior was just so strong through the hips, and you couldn't tackle him, and he kicked for goal. He'd kick it 55 on the run, no problems consistently. So he probably he's the best I've seen a lot of.
Yeah.
Although I guess maybe it was when you said schoolyard, I'm sort of thinking, well, high marks sort of school, not playing AFL as we know it today.
Yeah.
If I had to pick another who I've watched over the journey, I'd say Tom Hawkins.
Yeah.
Because I just think he's so good and has been for so long and was criminally underrated, and now he's tailing off, and now people sort of, he's great. He's kicked 700. Like, he must have been good, but he's doing it the whole time, but always happy to give him off.
Yeah, that's the thing that I've always loved about Tom is the fact that, like, that assist count, that goal assist count is high, usually number one, somewhere in the top 5 in the comp every single year, and yet he's winning Colemans or being right thereabouts himself.
Yeah, but if you factor that in, he'd be getting close to I think he'd be getting close to 1,000 goals. And then if you look at someone like Tony Lockett, how many would have he given off in a career? 10? Like, it wouldn't be many.
From 60 and realised, it's the last quarter. I don't know if I have quite the tickets here. All right, let's try and...
Yeah, it wouldn't have been many. So in this day and age, to kick 700, but also give them out. And then when you look at the way the game's played with the team aspect, he just, he'll bring them in. He'll bring other people in, and suddenly, he gives one off to like a Gary Rowan. He's got confidence player. He's suddenly giving you more run and chase from the back line and things like that. So he's been great to watch as well.
And I guess our second last one there, and this is going back to kind of the North v Geelong sort of thing. Do you have any particular games, and I'd imagine they'll be successful ones as a North fan, but any games from between those two that you look back upon really fondly?
Well, fondly, obviously it's going to be successful.
Yeah. No, that's fine. I'll happily wear a loss towards the end of the show.
Well, see, I've sort of have to go right back because I don't remember too many. Oh, look, the 2014 semi was great, and that was... We went to that. It was not... I didn't sort of expect to win. Obviously, we were from the bottom half of the 8. You guys were from the top, but it meant... Us winning that meant a lot more to our team than you guys losing it. Yeah. Or if you had won it and gone on to a prelim, because obviously you'd had the 3 flags in the sort of years prior. And doing that, I sort of started believing we could win the flag, and we weren't even close the following week, but that was probably the most recent one. And then I do remember going to a final in, I think it was the 99 qualifying. I think Brett Allison kicked 7.
Yep.
And that was obviously the start of a premiership run, which I do recall. I'd say that, I mean, they're the finals. But then
of course,
the final that sticks out of my head is 94.
yes, of course.
And Dad's never let me forget it. Mick Martin kept Gary Ablett quiet all day, and then he bobbed up for
Pinched
this
that one at the end.
That's what happened. That's one of those moments in footy, isn't it?
Yeah, flip of a coin sort of thing, and it just plays out the wrong way. And I guess finally, and again, North perspective at the end here, where do you see things shaping up from here? Now, obviously, we can probably project a little bit for 2022 and maybe be close to the mark, but how do you see things shaping up from here? What's required? I guess, what are your thoughts on the coaching situation? All of those sorts of things.
I'll try and keep this brief because I could do another hour.
That's fair.
We're having issues, I think, from the top down, and that's not just the coach; it's the CEO.
Yep.
From what I understand, the people that we obviously had our recruiters walk out, and they were not the problem. They were leaving because of the problem.
Yes.
I think our senior coach, he has couldn't fault his effort, but I haven't seen enough improvement off many players at all in the group to sort of justify keeping on a development coach for any longer. And the losses we've had are pretty demoralising, and it can only it could get better, but it seems to just be getting worse and worse and worse. There are some more winnable games in the back half of the year, so I do want to see what happens. We certainly had a better back half of the 2021.
Yeah, you did.
I think we went 3-4 and drew 1, or 2-4 and drew 1, or something like that. And that was just through suddenly playing together and having some more time together. And then we've let more senior players go and not replace them with enough seniority, and that's really hurt us through the first 12 weeks of this year. I personally don't think the coach will last, and I thought the buy round was a good time to have him go. But
if you're going to do it,
you've got to. You can't just get rid of a coach because he's no good. You need to have a better coach coming in, and
a plan.
What's killed us is we've gone from Brad Scott. The time was right. He had 10 years. We were on our way back down. We needed a fresh voice. Absolutely love him for what he did for our club and won't forget it. We then, Reece Shaw came in. We then didn't really go through a process and appointed him senior coach, and then went through the pandemic year, and that obviously went south, and it wasn't good for anyone. No. So then we go through a process and end up with David Noble. That's 3 voices in 2 years. Now
consistency is a big issue as a result.
It's a massive thing, and I look at Richmond through the early 2000s onwards, and Frawley and Geishan and Wallace, and then Hardwick, and then they obviously got to, what was it, 15 or 16, and they were unsure, and then they went to the board and they backed him in because he had that time and built it up, and then bang. Same thing with Bomber Thompson in
2006. We had the exact same conversation at the end of 2006, and next year, premiership.
Backed him in, and he'll forever be remembered for what he did. So I don't think that's necessarily where Noble's at, but you've got to have someone really good coming in. So we might get to the point where we have to do it because you can't keep losing by 60 plus every week.
Yeah.
But it's not a case of, oh, he's no good, we need a new coach, and then you do a Carlton and you bring in Bolton and then you bring in Teague, and then you 6 years go down the drain and you're rebuilding a rebuild, and suddenly you get a voice like Voss and the team suddenly plays like Voss. And
so does it need to be Clarko? Because he's obviously the name that everyone, like, does it need to be Clarko? Is there someone you see out there you think, look, if we got them, maybe they're not the almighty, praise, everyone's singing from the mountains that, Clarko's the next golden child thing coming from God. But is there anyone else that you see out there you think, look, if it worked out and we got them, I could see a good future, positive future ahead?
That's a good question. I reckon everyone's got all their eggs in the Clarko basket, and he can't coach 6 clubs.
Between GWS, people still want to doubt Stuart Dew over there at the Gold Coast. You've obviously got you guys. There's like West Coast. Are people going to start questioning Adam Simpson soon?
Well, Simpson's the one where he's had sort of 10 years there. They got to a grand final, went back down, they won a flag.
He's got the
North
blue and
Melbourne
white blood.
captain. Yeah, a lot of those boxes are ticked having him come back. I don't want us to try and pry him out and force him to come back because he's an ex-North Melbourne. I think we just need to follow an actual process. But there aren't many, I guess there aren't many sort of just out of the game now that are suddenly available. It's, you got to also have the team around them,
Yeah.
I guess. And I think that's what Melbourne have done really well with. Obviously, you've got Goodwin running the show, and I was very critical of him for quite some time. All the way up until the grand final last year was I critical of him and got that one wrong.
Yeah.
But he had Mark Williams in the background doing things. They've got Alan Richardson, who, didn't go well as the man in St Kilda, but
Yes.
has a lot of experience and brings a lot to the table. So it's having the right group around the coach as well. And,
the team they bring with them.
We've got Jamie McMillan, who, great servant of our club, sort of 150 odd games, but never set the world on fire, and then went straight out of playing into the sort of assistant slash, I don't know what the official title is. Some of these players, ex-players, get very interesting official titles. But I think we need fresh. We need new people into the club. It can't just be a North Melbourne thing because then you limit who you're looking at. So, I haven't really answered your question in terms of
no, but I mean, you're right though. Like the pool that's out there is untried in a lot of ways, and which is, I think, why whenever a club, conversation about a club's coach comes up, it ends up coming back to Clarko because he is a known commodity, and you know that wherever he goes, he brings a team with him.
Yeah, that's true. The one name, and I don't think he's going to come back and coach, and he's burnt us twice, but Nathan Buckley would be someone I'd love to have. And obviously he burnt us in 94, I think, when he said, I don't want to go to North, I want to win premierships. Yeah. And then I don't know if we did or didn't, but we interviewed him before Brad Scott and just about offered him the job. And then obviously Eddie came swooping in and set up the whole succession thing. Yeah. So we shouldn't hold that against him. Fans will, but the club shouldn't. I think he's really speaks well in the media and holds himself well, and a lot of the success this year has to be attributed to what he did.
Yeah, I think that's hard to ignore.
You can't do it overnight.
Yeah, and I mean, I think it's one of those things that I think we all fall victim to these things a little bit. It's like you can kind of look over the fence at someone from another club or that's represent another club and kind of hate them, don't like them, whatever. But as soon as they become one of you, suddenly you change your tone a little bit. It's a normal reaction in the first place, but when they actually become kind of part of the family, you start to rethink and recalibrate a little bit. So, I guess any North supporters out there, don't be closed-minded to that sort of idea, whether it's Bucks or whatever. It could be fantastic for the club. Who knows? Maybe you just need to go and steal Chris Scott from us.
I did think of that, but I think he's firmly entrenched.
Yeah, he just re-signed.
Yeah, he did. Contracts don't mean anything, but...
Well, that's true.
We had Brad for 10 years.
Yeah.
I think we need a new face.
Yeah, not another Scott. Isn't that the guy we had 10 years ago? No, it's his brother. Oh.
We've got that Ben Mackay, Harry Mackay thing at the moment.
Yes.
Where they've never played
the same
against
person.
each other. Yeah.
We'll see what happens there. Well, Seb, thanks so much for coming on the show and sharing your experiences with footy, the podcast. Where should people go if they want to tune in?
We're at 12 Rows Back on Twitter, Instagram, and then anywhere you get your podcast, Spotify, Google, Apple Podcasts. Feel free to give us a listen. We just love talking footy, so a lot of what we say, it could be controversial, could be drivel. You might agree, you might disagree. At the end of the day, we sort of want to create an environment where you're just talking with your mates at the pub sort of thing, but through a podcast. So, and
that intro, I've got to shout out that intro music. I love hearing it.
Oh, thanks. Yeah. What's it? Shane Ivers. He's I don't really know who he is. I've googled royalty-free music. You just have to credit him.
It's a fantastic choice,
but it suited it well. I changed it for a few weeks at one point, and I got some quick feedback. They didn't like the change, so we better stick with it. Yeah, no, I must say I'm a big fan of what you got going there. But I mean, the show is fantastic, so please, watchers, listeners, tune in, go check that one out, and I guess long may it continue. You've created something fantastic out of the pandemic there, and
hopefully, with as you mentioned, obviously co-hosts and kids and those sorts of things. Hopefully, you can kind of work out what the cadence needs to look like through that period as things settle there, and the show continues going strong for the next, well, as long as possible.
Oh, thanks. We hope it does, and we love doing it. And thank you for having me on. It's been an absolute pleasure.
And good luck to the Roos. I'll admit, as of when this show goes live, we're about to play you guys, so I wish you nothing but the worst this coming weekend. But beyond that, hopefully the ship starts to get righted soon. Whether that's David Noble, Clarko, whoever it happens to be, Chris Scott pretending to be Brad Scott, whatever it happens to be. I wish nothing but the best for the club, because it's been a challenging period, of course. As you mentioned, there's not been a great deal of success since really the early 2000s, and they're a club that deserves it and have had to endure a lot just to get to this point, again, with all the moving locations conversations and all those sorts of things. So hopefully think the ship gets righted soon.
I'm sure it will, but we're here for the ride, so we'll see what happens.
And I guess speaking to the Cats fans at the end here, please make sure to subscribe to The Hoop Show on YouTube if you're not already. That button is directly below, so smash that one. And check out the Behind the Play podcast feed on all podcast services, good and bad. And just like 12 rows back, throw 5-star reviews at both shows. It's awesome for exposure. I'm sure, speaking for you guys a little bit there, but I'm sure we all appreciate it. And again, mate, thanks so much for coming on the show.
It's been a pleasure. Go Roos.
And Cats fans, remain Geelong strong. I'll see you next week.